day, as always, Internet. I hope this finds you well. Tonight, we're looking at Paul Gilbert, so... yeah, it's going to be all that sort of stuff. So, for those of you who are familiar, well, welcome back, both of you. For those of you who may be new to this, you'll find the tab for all these links linked in the description below, so hop on there, open up that page, and you can play along with them. What I'm going to try and do now is demonstrate them, hopefully free of too egregious mistakes. Now, this is the first link. This is taken from the end of the 2011 re-recording of Technical Difficulties from Racer X. And, well, I'll play through the whole thing first. This is sort of at speed. Now, if your will to live at this point has just got up and left, don't worry too much, because this is actually a fairly straightforward idea. Now, what Paul's doing is taking the E minor scale, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, and he's breaking this down into little 6-note patterns. So we're starting first from the F sharp, so F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. We've got a nice little rolling sextuple idea, 6 of the beats, I think 1 and 1. Now I believe he's playing legato, picking the first note, hammering the second and third. And that's the kind of sound you're getting, but you can always try staccato as well, picking each note. What I would say is when you're playing this with a lot of gain, and you will be using a lot of gain, is you're going to need to be very tight with the palm music. And what he does is simply follows that 6-note pattern. Start first in the F sharp, then the G, we end up with G, A, B, C, D, E. Going again from the A, B, C, C, D, sorry, A, B, C, D, E. He actually goes sneakily to an F natural, but to be fair, it's going past roughly the speed of light, so we won't worry too much about that. That will be a compromise made for fingering purposes. So just reiterate, from the F sharp, from the G, from the A, then we're carrying on up from the B, from the C, from the D, from the E. I believe he jumps over the F sharp and goes straight to the G. Certainly that was what I found when I was working through and telling it out. So that will give me. Then we carry on up. We're going to go from the A, B, C, then D, E, F sharp, then on to G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. And if you're looking at the tab now and thinking, well, it goes on to the 24th fret, yeah, there is something of a logistical issue here, as I'm playing a Strat with 22 frets, so you're going to have to just kind of use your imagination on that one. So playing this slowly. Now with a little bit more speed. So although it looks scary, well, in fact it looks absolutely bloody terrifying really when you look at the tab, it's actually a very simple concept. And this is at the heart of what a lot of Paul's playing is all about. He takes a relatively simple concept and then just simply amps it up. I mean, we're not talking turning this up to 11. 11 is way in the distance. We're turning it up to something like 4,012. So I end up with this absolutely scorching one covering pretty much the entire fretboard. But the nice thing about it, if you do understand it, you can break it down and use as much or as little of it as your current technical level allows. You know, it's the kind of thing you're not going to want all of that all the time, I would have thought, in any case. But it's the kind of idea where you can just take little chunks of it and you know, just decide that in a solo I'm going to play. You know, kind of work it into everyday blues and rock licks like that. Moving on to the second pattern. Now this is an arpeggio. Now unlike when we looked at Yngwie a couple of months back, Paul doesn't seem to use a lot of sweeping ideas, which works for me because frankly I suck at sweep picking. It's a little bit of a party trick, but it's never been something that's really gelled with me. So what he tends to do is use string skipping. I'm going to show you first off a straight up D major arpeggio. D, F sharp, A, so 12th fret D, 11th fret G, 14th fret G. Then we skip out B, 10th to 14th on the high E strings, that's D to F sharp. So you got your root third, fifth, then root third again. And what he'll do is connect them up using ham-ons and pull-offs, as noted in the tab. And you're just using straight up alternate picking there. And it really is, for me, it's a much nicer, much finger-friendlier way of dealing with arpeggios. Now what he will also do is start to augment those, because we've all played little things like adding in a second or a fourth to a chord. And so that's what Paul does as well with the arpeggio. Now, when I'm playing my arpeggio and I have my root, there we are, third and fifth, I have also the fourth, one semitone up. So I can add that in very easily as a passing tone, just hammering my way through it. There's also the ability to add the second. That will sit in between the root and the third, so that'll be the 12th fret on the high E string. And you start to add a little bit of speed into that. And that does seem to be the basis for an awful lot of his kind of more shreddy licks. We can even go one step further, talking about cranking up to 11 and then beyond, by adding a tap note. I can extend on the high E string by tapping on the 17th fret. That's going to give me the A, which is the chord's fifth. And I can go one step further, because more is always more. Certainly with Paul Gilbert, there is absolutely no. Where am I going with this? There's a huge amount of humour and a huge amount of over-the-top, just foot to the floor lunacy with his playing, which makes it hugely enjoyable. So yeah, as this final step developing this arpeggio, what I'm going to do is take my 17th fret A note, the chord's fifth, slide up to the 22nd fret, the root, that's the D, and that's going to give me this. Now, it's less commonly used. He does tend to stick to the major pattern with that, but you can do it. You can turn it into a minor without too much trouble. So what I've done here then, a tab down. You can see that I've shifted the third back, so they've gone from the F sharp here and here to F natural here and here. It's not quite as accessible as the major, but it's okay. It's something you can get used to with practice. And again, we can dial in the fourths. We can add in the seconds. And we can add in the fifth, taps and slip into the root. Right, moving on then to the next lick. This is again taken from Technical Difficulties, and it's following the chord sequence of E minor, D and C. And really what he's doing is, you've got your basic E minor arpeggio here. There's B, E, G, so we're using a second inversion E minor arpeggio, 12th fret B, 12th fret high E, 15th fret on the high E, and I'm going to use that pull off. And so again, pretty straight up concept. If you've ever heard Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, you'll recognise it from there. If you've ever heard pretty much any Iron Maiden solo, you're going to have heard it in there too. And it's not very far removed, of course, from Hotel California. Basically, you're dealing with the same idea. So now, when we think about our arpeggio, so I've got my root note here, I've got my flat third here, and I've got my fifth here. So that means that above my flat third, I've got the fourth a tone higher, and I've got the second a semitone lower. And as he moves down following the chord sequence, the next move down to the D. So second inversion again, A, D, F sharp here at the 14th fret. And we move down to the C, G, C, E. So major third, tone low is my second. Now the fourth of a C chord is an F natural, which we don't have in this key of E minor. So he uses the F sharp on the 14th fret, a little bit of a stretch, but you adjust your thumb grip so you've got your thumb coming a little bit more on the underside of the neck, more straight up. You'll find that it's actually not too bad. And then the chord changes to A minor underneath that, and he's playing. So again, based on an A minor, fifth, root, flat third, and he's moving between the flat third and the second semitone below. Before going up for running down the G major scale, or E minor as we're viewing it as. And just kind of just in sixes there. One, and so your whole thing will sound a little like this. Okay, and we've made it all the way to the last lick, and I'm not dead of exhaustion yet, so hopefully you're not either. What I've done here is try to condense, this is sort of like a portmanteau, a lot of the various techniques that he uses when he's going full-on foot to floor whittle. And what he's using are scale fragments, very similar to the approach that we saw when we looked at Sean Lane a couple of months back. But hell, great minds think alike, right? As I've said to many of my students before, a hand is a hand and a guitar neck is a guitar neck, and it doesn't matter whether it's you or me or Paul Gilbert or Sean Lane, so we are all going to gravitate to the same things, hence why so many songs will go G, D, E minor and C. Back to the plot. So this is my little scale fragment lick. And again, that's an illustration of the kind of thing that he's playing. Now what I've tabbed out there, so I'm using 6 notes of the E minor scale, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. If you're familiar with some of my approaches to scale fragments, you might recognise that as a Phrygian pattern. If you don't worry, it's just a cool word. Now again, there's no point trying to replicate absolutely note for note, because really this is much more of a dynamic effect than an actual melody. So when you're going through this stuff, don't worry too much about it. Just take the approach that I've tabbed out and mould it, make it fit what's natural to you. That's what Paul does. You don't have to be playing every technique all the time in every song. One thing I've discovered looking at these guys is that oftentimes it's a lot simpler than you might think, and a lot of these guys will take a relatively limited palette of techniques and just do them really, really well. I forget the quote from Bruce Lee, but he said it was something along the lines of, I only have 2 moves. I punch someone or I kick them. I've just got really good at it. It's not quite, I'm paraphrasing, but it's often much better to be good at really good at a smaller variety of things than it is to try and be really good at everything and never quite get there. That's the point I'm making. So, what I'm doing here then is picking the 12th fret, hammering my way across it, 13th to 15th, so B, C, D, up to the 12th fret high E. Then I'm going back down onto the B. So pick the 15th, pull off the 13th, 12, 13, 15. Now you can just sit and run that scale fragment. But what I'm going to do here instead is go up to the 12th fret, and now I'm going to hammer onto the 14th, 15th, pull back off the 14th, back off the 12th. And I would say it's worth, I mean, I'm using a Phrygian pattern here, but you can use any of the modal patterns. There's major, there's Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and even Locrian. Picking there because I don't really trust my fretboard up here. You can see it's a little on the worn side. And you can start to evolve that as well. I haven't tabbed this out, but you can go a little bit further with this and start to go, okay, well, what happens if I combine these scale fragments? Well, that's what happens if you combine the scale fragments. There I'm doing Phrygian into Lydian. Let's see what happens if I try and stick the Mixolydian in there as well. Well, I go wrong is what happens there, but if I slow that down a little bit. And you can see that Aeolian got in on the act as well. And if you can take just 1 or 2 of these, well, you take one scale fragment, get good at that, begin to slide into another one, before you know it, your fingers are actually going to find that they're taking the initiative themselves. And you're much better able to control these scale fragments than you would if you're trying to control, you know, sort of a big 6-string scale pattern. Okay, well, we've made it all the way through, and I'm not dead, and I hope you're not either. So, thank you very much, Internet. Do not forget to like, share, subscribe, the holy grail of YouTube, and as we inch our way through to the magic 100 subscribers, please share this as well with anyone you think might find it interesting, or might just find it amusing, or might care to embarrass me with it later on. And yeah, and I will see you next month for a little more Stevie Ray Vaughan. Alright, all the best, Internet. Take care.